I'm a 29-year-old woman, entered into matrimony with my 30-year-old husband 4 years ago, and our journey towards parenthood began around 6 months prior. It was an aspiration born from my deep-seated desire to nurture and raise a family of my own, a dream I had cherished since the early days of our marriage. Despite my husband's initial reservations about the timing, I managed to convince him that the present moment was opportune for expanding our family. Financial stability and a mutual readiness to embrace parenthood seemingly aligned, prompting our decision to embark on this new chapter of our lives. However, as months passed without the much-awaited news of conception, a cloud of concern began to loom over us. While I harbored hopes for a natural progression towards pregnancy, the absence of positive results led us to seek medical guidance. It was a decision that stemmed from a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, knowing that it held the key to unlocking our parenthood journey. Amidst the anticipation, there lingered an unspoken fear, a fear of discovering an obstacle in our path to parenthood. Nonetheless, we proceeded with the tests, propelled by a shared determination to confront any challenges together. Yet, even amidst this shared resolve, a sense of unease gnawed at me, a premonition that the outcome might reveal more than we were prepared to face. When the results finally arrived, confirming our suspicions, I found myself grappling with a myriad of emotions. Disappointment mingled with sorrow as the reality of our situation sunk in. Infertility, a word heavy with implications, now stood between us and our dreams of starting a family. As we absorbed the weight of this revelation, I couldn't help but notice my husband's reaction, a curious blend of annoyance and detachment. It struck me as peculiar, his lack of visible distress contrasting sharply with my own emotional turmoil. Little did I know then that his demeanor harbored a secret, a truth that would only come to light in due time. I want to discuss my mother-in-law. As I mentioned earlier, my husband and I decided to postpone the idea of having a baby due to emotional strain. However, my mother-in-law was aware of our attempts to conceive, as my husband had shared our plans with her. She eagerly anticipated becoming a grandmother, while my husband seemed more nervous than excited. I brushed it off, attributing it to the natural apprehension surrounding impending fatherhood. Despite our struggles, my mother-in-law continued to inquire eagerly about any potential news of a pregnancy whenever she visited. Each time, I felt a pang of guilt for not disclosing the truth, especially after learning of my husband's infertility. However, I couldn't bring myself to shatter her excitement, believing it wasn't my place to share such personal information. During one visit, she once again broached the topic, even suggesting doctors we could consult if facing difficulties conceiving. I was on the verge of revealing our decision to postpone, but my husband interjected, assuring her that everything was fine and she would be the first to know of any pregnancy. His response caught me off guard, and I felt unsettled by his reluctance to be honest with his mother. Later, he explained that he wasn't emotionally prepared to discuss our situation with her. While I found his explanation unsatisfactory, I refrained from pressing further, acknowledging the strong bond between him and his mother, forged through years of adversity after his father's untimely passing during his childhood. It was just my husband and his mother against the world, a bond forged through years of adversity. When he confided in me, expressing his reluctance to disappoint her after already disappointing me, it struck a chord deep within me. Despite my own frustration, I couldn't bear to see him torn between his loyalty to his mother and his commitment to our relationship. However, as time passed, the situation grew increasingly unbearable. My mother-in-law's relentless messages and calls, filled with hopeful inquiries about a potential pregnancy, weighed heavily on me. Each reminder of our failed attempts to conceive served as a painful jab, exacerbating my disappointment and sense of inadequacy. After much internal turmoil, I knew something had to change. I mustered the courage to confront my husband, urging him to break the news to his mother and put an end to her relentless inquiries. Though hesitant at first, he eventually agreed, understanding the toll it was taking on me. The silence that followed was deafening. Without the constant barrage of calls and messages, I found myself in an uneasy limbo, unsure of what to make of the abrupt cessation of communication. Yet, amidst my own emotional turmoil, I decided to give her space, assuming she would reach out when ready. However, any semblance of hope was shattered when I stumbled upon a venomous Facebook post by my mother-in-law. In it, she expressed regret about her son's marriage to me, a sharp betrayal of the trust and respect I had once held for her. I watched in disbelief as the accusations unfurled in front of me on social media. My mother-in-law's post, dripping with venom and accusation, painted a devastating picture of my wife, Eliza. She labeled her as deceitful, selfish, and barren, condemning her for supposedly tricking our son into marriage and withholding the truth about her infertility for 4 long years. As the weight of her words settled over me, I felt a surge of emotions: anger, confusion, and heartache. How could this be happening? Eliza and I had built a life together, filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. Yet, in one fell swoop, my mother's public outburst threatened to shatter it all. Ignoring the flood of calls and messages that followed the post, I made my way home, desperate to confront the turmoil head-on. The once cordial relationship between my mother and Eliza now hung in tatters, and I was determined to uncover the truth behind the accusations. Arriving home, I found Eliza visibly shaken, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. It pained me to see her this way, knowing that she was unfairly maligned without a chance to defend herself. Sitting down together, we delved into the heart of the matter, unraveling the tangled web of misunderstanding and miscommunication. Eliza's revelation about her infertility was not news to me. We had faced this reality together, grappling with the disappointment and uncertainty it brought. But to see my mother weaponize this private struggle against her felt like a betrayal of trust. In the midst of the chaos, I found solace in Eliza's unwavering strength and resilience. Despite the onslaught of accusations and judgment, she remained steadfast, her dignity unblemished. Together, we resolved to weather this storm as a united front, refusing to let external strife tear us apart. In the days that followed, we navigated a maze of difficult conversations and strained relationships, but through it all, our bond emerged stronger than ever. He hadn't answered my calls or responded to my texts when he finally arrived home, an hour after me. To my dismay, the post on his social media profile, still adorned with the pregnancy announcement, lingered for all our mutual friends to see. It was a stark reminder of the lie he had spun to his mother, a lie that had caused irreparable damage to our relationship and sown seeds of doubt among our social circle. When he walked through the door, attempting to placate me with feeble excuses, I could barely contain my fury. The air crackled with tension as I confronted him about his deceit. Despite his attempts to deflect blame and minimize the gravity of the situation, I refused to be swayed. It was clear to me that he had prioritized his own comfort over the truth, leaving me to bear the brunt of his deception. As he stumbled through his explanations, I felt a surge of betrayal wash over me. How could he have lied to his own mother about something so deeply personal? And now, in the aftermath of their fallout, he expected me to simply overlook her public humiliation of me, a humiliation based on falsehoods and fueled by spite. In that moment, I realized that I could no longer tolerate his manipulative behavior. His attempt to dictate my actions, to silence me in the face of injustice, was the final straw. With a heavy heart and a resolve born of indignation, I made a decision. I refused to be cowed into submission. Gathering my strength, I informed him that I would no longer be complicit in his deception. If he wouldn't set the record straight with his mother and demand accountability for her actions, then I would do so myself. It was a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of my agency in the face of betrayal. And so, with a sense of liberation tinged with sorrow, I bid him farewell and sought refuge in the solitude of a nearby hotel. As I navigated the flood of missed calls and messages from concerned loved ones, I found solace in the unwavering support of my family. In their voices, I found strength and validation, reaffirming my decision to stand up for myself in the face of adversity. When confronted with the news of my husband's infertility, I made a conscious decision not to stoop to the level of my mother-in-law's venomous accusations. Instead, I chose to handle the situation with grace and dignity, refusing to cast blame or engage in petty accusations. Reflecting on our upbringing, it became evident that our values and principles were shaped by vastly different environments. While my parents instilled in me a sense of compassion and understanding, my mother-in-law's actions revealed a stark contrast in her approach to adversity. Seeking solace and guidance, I turned to my family for support, sharing the ordeal I had endured with my husband and the subsequent decision to seek refuge in a hotel. Their unwavering faith in my actions served as a source of strength, reinforcing my resolve to stand up for my beliefs. Although my departure from our marital home was a significant step, I soon realized that the challenges were far from over. Despite the deletion of my mother-in-law's accusatory post, the damage had already been done, with countless eyes witnessing the unjust vilification. Yet, I found solace in the unwavering support of my inner circle, who stood by me through the tumultuous ordeal. With their understanding and reassurance, I felt empowered to weather the storm, knowing that the truth resided within the confines of our trusted bonds. The strain on my relationship with my husband had been palpable long before the public debacle, with his constant irritability serving as a constant reminder of our fractured connection. The final blow came not from his acknowledgement of fault but from the revelation of his past indiscretions. Receiving a message from a purported ex-girlfriend shattered whatever semblance of hope remained, plunging me into a maelstrom of doubt and disillusionment. Despite initial skepticism, the truth of her claims soon came to light, unraveling the threads of trust that once bound us together. As I grappled with the harsh realities of betrayal and deceit, the path forward became clear. She proved her claims by sharing a few old pictures of her and my husband, dating back years. According to her, she was his girlfriend right before me, and their relationship spanned about 3 years. I had met my husband at the age of 23 through a blind date, and after 2 years of dating, we tied the knot. Throughout our courtship, he had assured me that he had never been in any serious relationships before me. However, this woman asserted that she had been a significant part of his life for nearly 5 years, with plans for marriage in the works. They had met in college and apparently remained together until the year I met him. Learning about this was already shocking, but it took a darker turn when she revealed that their breakup was due to her desire to start a family. Despite not being married, they were trying to conceive, with her parents not yet approving their union. While she felt ready to embark on this journey, unfortunately, they discovered he was infertile. This revelation led to emotional turmoil and arguments, ultimately resulting in their breakup. After our paths crossed, she contemplated warning me but ultimately refrained, deeming it none of her business. However, upon learning about my mother-in-law's disparaging post through a mutual college friend, she felt compelled to inform me of his past. I found myself at a loss, grappling with a flood of conflicting emotions, unsure of how to proceed, and overwhelmed by a sense of numbness. Upon learning the truth, I was devastated. I remember breaking down in tears, feeling as vulnerable as a child whose world had been shattered. The realization that everything I thought I knew about my husband was nothing but a facade left me reeling with anguish. Despite the clarity it provided for our impending divorce, I found myself paralyzed by grief, unable to take any decisive action. For an entire day, I remained in a state of emotional turmoil, replaying countless conversations in my mind, each one tainted by the knowledge of his deceit. The weight of his betrayal bore down on me, suffocating any semblance of resolution or closure. However, it was in the depths of despair that a sense of clarity finally emerged. In a moment of defiance, I made the decision to share the results of his fertility test on Facebook, tagging both him and his mother, an act of retaliation inspired by her own public humiliation of me. Though it was a petty move, driven by a desire to expose his lies, it felt like reclaiming a sliver of power in the face of his deception. Turning off my phone, I braced myself for the fallout, knowing full well that my actions would provoke a response. True to form, he called the next morning, his voice dripping with anger and resentment. Despite his tirade, I listened quietly, refusing to engage in his attempts to shift blame or guilt. His subsequent text messages were riddled with accusations, claiming that I had ruined his life with my actions. Yet, amidst his protestations, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. He failed to realize that his own actions had led to this moment of reckoning. In response, I confronted him with the truth about his ex-girlfriend, about his knowledge of his infertility, all of which had come to light in the wake of his mother's ill-advised post. I didn't anticipate him having a response, but he did. He argued that regardless of the circumstances, it was inappropriate for me to share such personal information publicly. To some extent, he's right. Deep down, I knew my actions were petty and inappropriate, but that was my intent. Despite this awareness, I can't shake this overwhelming sense of guilt for posting his fertility report online. Perhaps it was fueled by emotion, or maybe I felt he deserved it. Honestly, I'm unsure. That's why I'm here, seeking input, as I struggle to trust my own judgment amidst the chaos of my personal life. Am I the antagonist for posting my husband's fertility report online after my mother-in-law falsely accused me of infertility on Facebook, even going so far as to insinuate my husband regretted marrying me? Update: So, I finally initiated divorce proceedings today. It was long overdue, considering I've been away from home for 2 weeks now. After reading the comments here, I decided to take the post down. While he may have deserved it, I refuse to stoop to their level for the sake of petty revenge. I'm not my mother-in-law, and I won't resort to her tactics. A friend connected me with a lawyer a couple of days ago, and given my husband's actions, the settlement should be straightforward. We haven't communicated since his last text following the online revelation, and honestly, I'm fine with that. I also reached out to thank his ex for disclosing the truth. I had been ignoring non-work related contacts due to emotional exhaustion, but I'm slowly regaining my footing and striving to reclaim control of my life. It appears that this marriage wasn't destined to endure, and perhaps that's why it's unraveling now. In hindsight, it's somewhat fortunate that we didn't conceive a child, as the prospect of navigating a divorce while expecting would have compounded the complexities. Reflecting on the situation, it's astonishing to realize that my husband deceived me regarding his romantic history, particularly after our 5-year relationship and contemplation of parenthood. Nonetheless, I've come to terms with the circumstances and am focusing on moving forward. An expedited update: I've transitioned from the hotel to my friend's residence, where we're splitting the rent. The new neighborhood is considerably more appealing than my previous locale. My husband will retain ownership of our former house due to his greater financial contribution, with the understanding that I will eventually receive reimbursement. Now comes the challenging task of returning to our shared residence to gather my belongings. It's impractical to continue rotating through the same limited wardrobe I hastily packed. Additionally, there are personal items left behind that require retrieval. Although I've briefly communicated with my husband to arrange this visit, I've opted for brevity to expedite the process. Tomorrow evening, following the conclusion of my workday, I'll embark on the task of packing up my possessions and completing my relocation to my friend's home. Reuniting with my husband under these circumstances will undoubtedly be peculiar, yet it signifies a step towards closure. I find myself in a surreal state as I contemplate the upcoming divorce proceedings. It's astounding to think that I've invested 4 years of my life in a relationship, only to realize that the foundation of trust and belief I had built was shattered by deceit. Tomorrow, as the legal process unfolds, I hope for a smooth and dignified resolution devoid of unnecessary tension or discomfort. Update: Hello everyone. I'm currently settled into my new living space, typing away at a late hour, so please excuse any potential errors in my recounting of today's events. As mentioned earlier, today marked the first face-to-face encounter with my soon-to-be ex-husband, a moment rife with palpable tension and awkwardness. With minimal conversation, we packed our belongings, avoiding any confrontation that might unsettle the atmosphere, especially in the presence of my accommodating friend. While he remained engrossed in a televised game, my friend and I efficiently completed our task, maintaining a respectful distance. However, just before my departure, my husband expressed a desire for a private conversation. Sensing the gravity of the moment, my friend graciously exited, affording us the privacy we needed. Seated face to face, my husband earnestly extended an apology, acknowledging the magnitude of his actions. Despite his evident remorse, I found it challenging to extend forgiveness prematurely, recognizing the depth of the wounds inflicted. Instead, I pressed for answers, seeking clarity on the motivations behind his deceit, understanding that truth would ultimately triumph over deception. If I had known about his infertility before we married, I wouldn't have gone through with it. Even so, he owed me honesty, yet all I got were lies and false promises. It felt like he had deceived me from the start, leading me on with hopes that were never going to materialize. When I finally confronted him about his deception, his explanation left me dumbfounded. He genuinely believed that the test results might have miraculously changed this time around. It was absurd, yet he seemed entirely earnest. In that moment, I almost laughed at the sheer absurdity of it all, but I held back. His denial ran deep, driven by a desperate desire for something he couldn't have. I didn't mince words when I told him about the impending divorce and the inevitable ugliness of it all. I made it clear that once it was over, there would be no contact between us. However, I also urged him to seek help, recognizing the gravity of his actions. His silence spoke volumes as I left without another word. In a strange way, meeting him for that final confrontation brought me a sense of relief. Giving him a piece of my mind felt oddly satisfying. Now, I hope to finally move on from this chapter of my life. Stay tuned for more tales from the realm of relationships.